Welcome back to WCB Jazz Vinyl. This is always one of my favorite videos of the year because we're going to talk about my favorite new releases of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present my top 10 favorites, and I'm also going to kind of lead with 14, call it honorable mentions, right? So if you're thinking about putting together a list to sort of catch yourself up in terms of all the music that's come out, maybe this is a good place to start, right? This is obviously my personal taste, but for those of you who follow my channel, maybe you'll find something in here that you like as well. So before we dive into it, as always, hit like, hit subscribe, and if you'd like, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at what_can_brown. All right, so let's start with those honorable mentions. Now, we'd be here all day if I was going to give you actually detail on all of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cover these 14, again, call them honorable mentions, really quick, and then we're going to get into the top 10 my favorite releases. Keep an eye on the chapter stops if you want to skip ahead, but I don't think you should. I think you should just hear me out because this isn't going to take more than a couple seconds per release. All right, so honorable mentions again. I'm just going to kind of blow through these. So the first one, Christopher Hoffman's Vision is the Identity. Fantastic release of this year. Again, I'm not going to tell you much. You're going to have to go and preview each of these. Do it on Bandcamp or something, right? Because I'm trying to get to the the top 10. So Mike Reed, The Separatist Party, right? This is a great one. Ben Lamar Gaze on that one. This is actually a little bit interesting, maybe a little bit different than what you typically see in my channel, but the artist is DIVR or Diver. I don't know. It's called Is This Water? Fantastic release. By the way, some of these actually have a little bit of an electronic vibe. You're probably going to be aware of who Shabaka Hutchings is, and maybe you'll be disappointed that this wasn't on my, it actually didn't make my top 10, but this is Perceive Its Beauty, Acknowledge Its Grace. Fantastic release. Incidentally, this was put out on Vinyl Me Please, and so they actually have a numbered edition that you can get. I think it's a double LP. Another Vinyl Me Please release, actually, you can get a regular edition, but Kamasi Washington's Fearless Movement. Again, so numbered edition in this case. And something tells me, again, that people are going to be disappointed that this wasn't in my top 10, which gives you more excitement for what is the top 10, right? So the next one, this is actually the only one, I think, where the artist is actually now deceased, but this was music that hadn't previously been released. It was unearthed. And I didn't want to include it really in terms of like a reissue because it's not. It really is. It felt like a new release to me. And again, I get to make the rules. So this is Roy Hargrove's Grand Terre. Really, really nice. This great lineup, just fantastic. I'm sorry about the glare. There's probably some glare from the shrink wrap, but that one came out very recently. Another late year release that a lot of people had in their top 10, including like major reviewers, but this is Jeff Parker, Way Out of Easy. So this was put out on International Anthem, and again, it's not that I didn't love it. I did. It's just it snuck out of the top 10, like just barely. Here's an interesting one that I think a lot of people probably missed. So this is Tsuyoshi Yamamoto, and this is very much in the style of Three Blind Mice, the fantastic Japanese label. So we have Blues for K, and it was actually put out in 2 volumes. Whoops, what am I doing here? Giving you too many. So Blues for K Volume 1 and Volume 2. I actually think that there's a chance this was put out in 2023 in Japan, but not didn't make the U.S. market until 2024. So I kind of included these just because you couldn't get them. Like they, again, I make the rules, right? So you couldn't get them in the U.S. until just very, very recently, and so I had to include them. This next one is something that I actually made a whole video about, and I was very impressed by. So this is Jerome Saba's Heart, and this is on his own label, Analog Tone Factory. Fantastic album, but again, just sort of snuck out of the top list. Next one, International Anthem, Kasi Kanoshi's Seed. You're going to see this on a lot of other top 10 lists, major publications, and it's a great album. Something that really appealed to me, and maybe I didn't see as much attention elsewhere, was another on International Anthem. It's called The Closest Thing to Silence. And so this is Ariel Kalma, Jeremiah Chu, and Marta Sophia Honer. Really, really nice. Preview that on Bandcamp. And actually, speaking of, this is right at the beginning of the year. I want to say this is January. So Jeremiah Choose in Electric Time. So this came out on like tape. I think it came out on like tape like late last year, but it was out on vinyl. It took them a little bit. They only released it on tape. Then they decided to release it on vinyl. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating sort of experiments with the synthesizer. I think, yeah, it's the synthesizer. So he went into like a synthesizer museum and just kind of experimented. Really, really cool. And all right, just two more actually. So this is Reservoir. All of their albums happen to be titled Reservoir, so it's kind of difficult to figure out what's what. But go check this one out. Fantastic release. And the last one that's an honorable mention. Man, I really love their previous album by Paradise Cinema, and they came back this time with an album called Returning Dream. Really, really good stuff. So what I'm going to try to do, by the way, is I know I went through these rapid fire, didn't give you any information, but again, honorable mentions. I'm going to try to list these in the description in case you want to sort of link to where you can hear them on Bandcamp or where you can hear them elsewhere. All right, just one more that I forgot. It was down on the floor. I forgot it. But you know, definitely deserves to be part of my honorable mentions. Joel Ross's New Blues. So this is actually put out on Blue Note. So brand new music by Blue Note. Also includes Emmanuel Wilkins on this title. Really fantastic. This actually, even out of all of these, I mean, I said this, I think probably out a few of these that sort of snuck out, but this one was like barely in my top 10, just kind of dropped out. But no, you know, no slight against this fantastic album. Go check this one out as well. All right, so let's go through these top 10. Now, I'm going to say I'm not going to do these in order except for my favorite release of the year. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 9 of these titles. Then I'm going to tell you what my favorite, absolute favorite vinyl new music release of the year is. Maybe I'll tell you what my previous year releases are as well in case you missed them from prior videos. So the first one that we're going to talk about, and I am going to try to pronounce everybody's name in this video because even if I don't get it right, at least I'm trying, right? So so the first one that we're going to talk about is by Olli Ahvenlahti. So this album is titled Mirror Mirror, and it is on the label We Jazz, which is out of Helsinki. So this album includes, let's see, Jukka Eskola on trumpet, Jonathan Rautio on tenor, Ville Herala on bass, and Jaska Lukarinen on drums. Apologize if I got anybody's name wrong. The vibe on this is smooth. And it's certainly the artist is very well experienced and actually sort of comes from, you know, call it that 70s 80s school of music. So this does harken back to some of that sort of smooth style, but there's enough of an organic edge, I think, to this music that it avoids sounding too produced. I would say if you're going to preview anything, check out the track. The title track, actually, Mirror Mirror, has a super catchy melody, excellent solos. And again, this is one of those that really jumped out of nowhere. I certainly was aware of this artist, the leader, but kind of associated him, I think, with an older style of music, and I just hadn't heard as much of his new stuff. But turns out he's putting out some fantastic work. So again, I'm not going to rank these first 9, but check this out. Again, link in the description for all of these if you want to preview a track. I would love to include a track here, but YouTube would block my account, would block the video. No one would be able to see it because of copyright violations. So please do, you know, if you're interested in just previewing a track, check out the link and yeah, check this one out. All right, next up, it takes a lot for a live album to make my top releases of the year. And this is the one and only, actually. So this is Devin Daniels, and it's titled Lesgo. So this is released on the Sam First Records label, not the Sam Records label that's out of what, like the UK or Paris? I think it's Paris, actually. This is Sam First, and this is recorded live at their LA club. This was really a surprise, not because I don't know that they can't put out great music, but a live performance to make my top albums of the year. So Devin Daniels on alto, Julian Knowles on trumpet, Chris Fishman on piano, Jermaine Paul on bass, and Benjamin Ring on drums. So what to say about this? Well, I would say that there are sort of I don't know, nods to Coltrane on this for sure. In fact, they do indeed play a Coltrane tune. But for me, actually, the title track "Lesgo" is the standout here. So otherwise, a few notes about this, and maybe some of the reasons why this makes my top 10 is that Bernie Grundman does the lacquer cutting. Of course, that's nothing like you can't just say like who does the lacquer cutting is going to make the music great. That's completely aside. Obviously, the musicians are fantastic here, but I did have to mention that the sound on this is amazing. And obviously, it was recorded at just a very well sort of curated club. If anybody has the opportunity to go check out this club, definitely do. So, all right. So what else do I have to say? Well, David Robert is the producer on this, and in fact, I've interviewed David Robert on my channel. I want to say sometime in 2024, could have been late 2023, but it's clear they're doing good work. Paul Solomon is the executive producer. I believe he also did the cover. Just so well recorded, such exciting music. Really makes me want to visit the club. I will say though, if you want to find out about Sam First Records music, I do believe still you have to go to their website, at least for the most part. There may be places you can find this album otherwise, but go to their website and order it direct. They're doing a lot of great work. All right, the next one up is by Muriel Grossman, and this is titled The Light of the Mind on RR Gems Records. The thing with Muriel Grossman records are they're always fantastic. They're just always so hard to get into the United States. You're always like importing them from Estonia or like, I don't know, Spain. Like it feels like every record is pressed in a different location and they're difficult to get into the US, but made sure to prioritize this one because I'm always interested in Muriel Grossman's work. So this is spiritual jazz in style. If you're a fan of that kind of music, so think Coltrane, think Pharoah Sanders. If you like those things, you're going to like this. In terms of the format, there's not a large format here actually, and I think that's one of the reasons why it makes it exciting. But you do have guitar, you have Hammond organ, and you have drums, plus Grossman who plays just really on a variety of reeds here. This one is also one that was just recorded extremely well. It's such a vibe. I think probably everyone is going to love this. It's more accessible than what you'd expect from even Coltrane or Sanders, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. It's just it's really engaging. So if you're going to preview a track on this one, I would say pointing out part one. But really, these tracks kind of they spill into each other. I don't think you can go wrong. This is just a really a fantastic album as a whole. All right, next one up is called Passacaglia. And this is by, again, from forgive my pronunciation or mispronunciation, but I believe it's Adam Baldych and Leszek Mozdzer. I don't know. Take a look at that. Difficult for me, especially with the accents when I don't know what they mean. But this is a double LP, 180 gram on color vinyl. It is just the two musicians, one on violin and the other on piano. Maybe the question is this jazz? And let's be real. Like I know definitions are sometimes problematic. Not necessarily not necessarily something that people care about these days. I think in the past people cared about what is or isn't jazz. Let's just kind of leave that aside and say that this is great music. It could be neoclassical, it could be contemporary jazz. Any way you look at it, it's fantastic. Fantastic music. Check out the very first track. As is common on some of these, it feels like sometimes the title track or the first track is the one to preview. And that's probably just because who puts together the album and they want to lead with something that's great, but it turns out that's the case on here as well. Check out the title track Passacaglia. I was very, very impressed with this, despite the fact that it is sort of quasi difficult to get here in the US. I ended up actually buying this from Amazon, but it was only because I tried ordering it from no less than two other places. Both of them ended up being on back order, and I had to get it on Amazon. And I will say, not the best cover, but certainly the music makes up for it, especially if you have like a nice system. This one also sounds really well, just really well engineered. All right, so the next one is an artist who has made my top list before. In fact, I think in multiple years of the last several years, and that is Isaiah Collier and the Chosen Few. And this is titled The World is on Fire. Now, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to talk down any of his prior releases, but there was a release that I wasn't as excited about as I have been for some of these others. this is one that, like, man, this is like right at the top. It just, like, even out of my top 10 list, this was like right at the top. It just didn't make it to the very top spot. This is a fantastic album. It's on double disc. So what to say? This is spiritual jazz in style. You have a fantastic lineup on here. You've got Michael Shekwa Aga Ode. You have Jeremiah Hunt, Julian Davis Reed. There's a number of other artists here as well, but that's sort of the primary. I'll call it the primary group. There's also vocalists on a few tracks. This is put out on Division 81 Records, which I believe is producing a number of Isaiah Collier's albums, and this may indeed be the last album that's going to be billed as Isaiah Collier and the Chosen Few. I think I did hear that. But this is fantastic. Check out the track "Time Is Now," which again is the track one on side one. But there is so much to love about this music. I feel like he does a better job than most about referencing older styles, older traditions, older ideas and themes within his music, but bringing them into a modern setting, making them new. So he isn't just nodding to the past; he's doing something new with it. And I just he is certainly one of the most exciting new artists I think that it's out there. I think he's in my top three, probably, like, new artists who's out there. Anything this guy puts out, I'm going to listen to, especially when it's on Division 81, because they've consistently done a great job. Ever since, I want to say, like, what was it, a couple of years ago, he did that one in Rudy Van Gelder's studio that was sort of a nod to A Love Supreme. Like, my God, like, this guy is he's, I don't know, he's pulling on all the right sort of traditions again, and doing something new and exciting with them. And I would love to hear this guy live sometime. Like, I just can't talk enough about how great this record is. All right, so let's keep going. This is an ECM release, and this is by possibly Oded Tzur, and it's titled My Prophet. Now, very simplistic cover, but very, very excellent music. In fact, unassuming considering how sort of blank the cover is. But again, ECM, they're kind of known for their minimalist style, right? So this is just fantastic music as well. I will say, well, so first of all, it's a quartet. Actually, you've got tenor by Tzur plays tenor. You've got I'm gonna try it. Nitai Herchkovitz on piano, Petros Klampanits on double bass, and Cyrano Almeida on drums. And Child You is absolutely fantastic. That is a standout track. Also check out the title track, My Prophet. If you're going to preview anything, I was really, really impressed. And I will say that ECM, my perspective of ECM is kind of the older sort of 70s style. Some of that stuff is a little bit too smooth, or too kind of blah, too, like, monotonous, if you will. This is definitely not that. I think it builds on some of the traditions of ECM in terms of, like, fantastic sound quality and engineering, but this one is really, really exciting. Great music, and yeah, I just highly recommend it. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is by Amaro Freitas. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this is the album, and I will say this is very different than everything else I'm talking about. In that this is more atmospheric. There are certainly many jazz elements to it, but this one is, like, heady, and you can, like, kind of zone out at times. There's a lot of organic elements to the music here. And I will say as well that the sort of the first half of the album is quite a bit different in tone than the second half of the album. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of similarities, but I would say don't just sort of stop if you start listening to, say, the first song, and you don't sort of stick along for the experience, because it is an experience. As far as supporting musicians, so even if you're not familiar with this artist, some of the supporting musicians you probably are, because we have Shabaka Hutchings, we've got Jeff Parker, and we have Brandy Younger, among others, who make guest appearances on this album. This is just absolutely gorgeous, and gosh, everything down to even the packaging. Like, this is, again, an artist that I wasn't otherwise familiar with. Beautiful gatefold, glossy all the way around, has an obi. These are things that you wouldn't buy an album for, or certainly not rank it in your top 10 for, but certainly make it a more of a pleasure perhaps to own it in this format, as opposed to buying it on digital. And I hesitate to even say what the track should be because I think the album should be experienced as a whole. So listen to it as much of this as you can. One other element that I'm going to reference because I know this is going to be the sort of thing that sort of keys people in, and that is that Kevin Gray actually cut the lacquers for this. So interesting when you have a guy like Kevin Gray paying attention to brand new music and sort of making an effort to play a role. The one thing I didn't reference about this is the album title, and that's because I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Y apostrophe Y, Yi, perhaps. All right, so if I was going to play the I Make the Rules card on anything on this top 10 list, it would be this one. So this is by Kinkajous, and it is called Nothing Will Disappear. So the reason why I led with that sort of little statement is because this is very much, call it electronic. It is somewhat experimental. It is kind of drum machine beats kind of stuff. And so very much, the music is sort of led by what I call drummer and producer who goes by the name of Benoit Parmentier. Again, I am terrible at pronouncing these things. Also, saxophonist Adrian Kiao, perhaps. So anyway, there's synthesizers here, there's saxophone, there's Fender Rhodes, there's bass, there's it's produced and it's drum machine and it's lots of these things. And don't get me wrong, I understand that perhaps a lot of people will listen to this music and think that it's more electronic, but I hear so many elements of jazz in this release and I absolutely loved it, so I had to include it. The only reason I'm not showing it to you is because even though I've been listening to it quite a bit on Bandcamp, my album, well, this has just been a really hard album to source, and so mine is actually still in transit and has been for some time. I think I ordered it perhaps from the wrong source. I want to say you might be able to get it from Dusty Groove and have a faster delivery because I've just been having a little bit of a hard time, and in fact, the next one I do as well. But yeah, Kinkajous again. Check it out. Like if you're all interested in some of those things that I mentioned in terms of it being heavily produced or even sort of, drum machines or hip hop elements or any, electronic, like all of these kinds of things that lately have been sort of enveloping a lot of, jazz traditions in terms of making new music, I think you're really, really going to dig this one. All right, so this last one before my number one release of the year. And this one was another one that sort of, man, it could have made it. It really could have. So this is by Andy Hay, and it's called Polaris. This is one that was released really just here in December. And I was trying to get it out of Wales, and it's still in transit. It's stuck in customs. It hasn't made any movement in the last 2 weeks. And so I'm bummed that I don't have it in hand. And one of the reasons why is because Andy Hay, if you remember some of my prior videos, my year-end recaps, what I always show about Andy Hay's releases is he does hand-painted covers. There's so much attention to detail in terms of the packaging. Every single item is unique, which is one of the reasons why he only releases them in very limited quantities. And all of that aside, because don't get me wrong, that sort of stuff really impresses me. The music is fantastic on this album. This is every bit as good as any release that came out in 2024. And again, I was very hard pressed not to include this as my number one. So the thing to know about Andy Hay is he's a drummer. Again, he's Welsh. He's played with a number of sort of the burgeoning UK movement. Very much sort of spiritual jazz in style. He does incorporate some vocals, but there's such a vibe to his music. It's like hypnotic kind of stuff. He incorporates lots of intricate rhythms, and he's played with all of these UK artists who are doing such amazing stuff out of that scene. I can't say enough about his work, and unfortunately, I actually don't know if you can get any. Actually, okay, at last check, there are just a couple of, and again, I don't make any money from saying this, and don't get me wrong, getting these on Bandcamp out of Wales and out of Europe is very expensive in terms of not only of the fact that you're paying for a slightly sort of higher priced item because it's all hand drawn, but then you're paying for the customs and the shipping and everything. I get it, but there's only a couple of copies left, and you should at least go preview, buy the digital tracks, even if you don't want the vinyl. I think everybody who follows this channel is probably going to really dig this album. All right, so number one, my favorite release of the year, and some people may say that this is, I don't want to say a cop-out, but cheating. but I assure you that it's not. And the reason why is because I couldn't include it in the last year's list. And the reason was not that it hadn't been released. It had been released on digital, had not been released on vinyl. And guess what? I make the rules, and on this channel we talk about vinyl releases, not just digital releases. And this one came out. It was supposed to come out last year, came out early this year. And maybe it'll come as no surprise to some of you, but this is Plumb. So this is by the excellent trio David Murray, Questlove, and Ray Angry, and this is put out by JMI Recordings. And what a fantastic package as well in terms of this like velvet case. So yeah, so I don't even know where to start, except to point you to the video that I made about this entire release. It was a glowing video in terms of how much of a fan I am of this music, of how great it sounds across all of the discs. There's a ton of content here. Don't get me wrong, this is a premium item, but this is like, it is. As soon as I heard it in 2023 in the digital form, I was so looking forward to the vinyl to hear how it sounded. Definitely best the digital form, being able to hear it on my setup, and having the opportunity to talk to the guys who produced this, in terms of Sugar Steve and Jay Cone. This is it's far and away my favorite. And even though right, I talk about Isaiah Collier and I talk about Andy Hagen, I talk about some of these artists who in prior years made my top list, and in fact very much were like at the top. So it feels like every year JMI Recordings has a title that makes my top 10, right? So this year we have Plumb firmly not only in the top 10 but at the top spot. Last year I talked about Antero Sievert's Dear Bossa. The previous year, I want to say my favorite release in 2022 was Sasha Berliner's Onyx. It's clear that they're doing great work. They're producing these albums very, very well. Like, they're choosing great artists. Like, I've just been very, very impressed with the quality of their work, and I really look forward to 2025. And again, I hesitate to get into too much detail on this because I've already done such a lengthy video, I think, in terms of like the unboxing of this and how much content there is here. And that's one of the reasons that drives the price, right? It's 4 discs, all just astonishing music that I think does a great job of highlighting each of these musicians, both as leaders in terms of leading the others and sort of taking the music in new directions, as well as playing that more subdued role and letting others kind of take the reins. This is one of those, though. I just I can't even imagine like being there in the studio hearing this music for the first time, and I am so bummed that I wasn't able to travel to New York to actually see them play live. I just I couldn't make it work with my work schedule, but they did, like, I forget how many nights that they did in New York. I think at the Blue Note Jazz Club in New York City. But this album, I believe you have to buy it on JMI Recordings website, as you often do with their albums, but it is well worth the price of admission, especially if you have a sort of a decent setup to take advantage of just how great the recording is as well. So those are my top 10 releases of the year, and apologize that I couldn't get into more detail on some of these, but obviously we got to keep these year-end recaps short. Check out, more than anything I would say about any of this music, check out the links in the description for each of these. I'm going to link to where you can preview these. And hopefully some of these are available if you end up enjoying any of them and want to go out and purchase them, because I get nothing, right, from bumping any of these artists. None of these links are affiliate links. My role here, what I'm trying to achieve here, is to make sure that I'm representing some of my favorite music, the artists that I'm most excited about, and hopefully if others like them as well and others start to buy their music, that will help ensure that these artists continue to make new and exciting music, because that's something that I enjoy. So that's the payback that I get, right? Talking about this stuff and helping promote their art form, because listen, like, we can talk about reissues all day and all night, and for the most part, all we're doing is making the labels money, to a lesser extent the estates of some of these deceased musicians. But how fantastic is it that we have these musicians on this list that are making new music today, including some legends up here, including like say a David Murray, but also some of the younger musicians as well. So yeah, that's why I love making this list so much every year, and that's why I had such a large kind of opening preamble of all of the honorable mentions, because all of those artists deserve your attention, and all of them, all of their music deserves to be heard. So thanks very much, everyone, for sticking with me as we make our way to the end of the year, and I will see you next time.